Right, now let's go over to Odessa, Ukraine, where we're going to be speaking to international relations professor Vladimir Dubovic. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thanks so much for joining me here today at Anews. You're in Odessa, Ukraine. Now there's talks that Kherson has been taken, mixed reports actually. Is there fears that Odessa could be next?
It certainly does. In fact, there is a reason for us to believe that we're kind of surprised that Odessa hasn't been attacked yet, because it was seen by many analysts as a possible target, primary priority target, but yet it wasn't, and that's good for us, of course, everyone in the city and people having families and those who haven't left the city. But there is a threat, and we are scared because there is battleships coming up to our shores. It's not the first time. The previous several times they have decided to delay their landing, and this time they might actually go ahead with the landing. And it's been already several times. There's been some shelling and some missiles hits around the city. So, of course, Odessa is not spared from the overall this massive Russian invasion.
And yet you're still there, sir. You're not thinking of leaving?
Well, no. I don't think many people can leave, and definitely not outside of Ukraine, because we have martial law, which means that only women and children can leave right now. All the men have to stay in Ukraine, and most of them don't have any plans of leaving and contribute in various ways. It's not just about military. Ukraine is proving itself to be not a failed state, but a very vibrant state. And I think it takes Kremlin by surprise. I think they thought they're going to crash Ukraine within like a couple of days. And they are encountering such a massive resistance, not just from the military, but from civil society, from citizens in the streets, basically unarmed people going and meeting their chants and making them turn. Of course, it's dangerous. Of course, they're shelling now cities. They're strangling the cities. They're doing the Aleppo-style attacks. And that's too bad.
Indeed, indeed. Yes, very brave indeed. And our hearts and minds and thoughts are with you all in these terrible times, and we're behind you. Hopefully, this will end soon. But let's talk about this a little bit more. Now we have the second round of these so-called, I'm going to call them so-called negotiations, because I think they're just, in my opinion, they're sort of just for show. But it's your opinion that we're interested in. So these second round of talks, what do you make of them? Are they going to happen? Well, they're going to happen, but what will they talk about?
Let me first say, in reaction to what you just ended with your previous remark, we really appreciate any support that is coming to Ukraine. And Turkey is obviously one of those countries which is supporting Ukraine enormously with many ways. Moral stance, diplomatic position, non-recognition of Russian grabbings in Ukraine, selling Bayraktars drones that are very significant to us, and hopefully we'll see more of those. And we're just seeing a lot of support, not just from the government, but from common citizens in Turkey. But with the negotiations, no one is hopeful at all. I think nothing really changed from the first round because Russia still thinks they probably have an upper hand and they can just add more pressure and Ukraine will break. In Ukraine, the mood is contrary to that. People are coalescing around the government. There is rallying around the flag. The polls are showing that Ukrainians are prepared to fight and everyone is against surrender. And the last polls are showing the president, who recently had something like 20 or 25% rating, he's now 90 plus. So Ukrainians are definitely not thinking that we should give in and give up and surrender. And there are many successful attacks by Ukrainian forces and Russian forces. And we're seeing that Russia are making a lot of mistakes. They have some better troops, and they have some rookies, 28 years kids who are being sent here, and they're hungry, and they're deserting, and they're dropping their weapons as well. And there have been many examples of them stopping and stalling in various directions and disoriented. And I think Moscow is kind of in a panic mode right now. They are already using almost all of the forces they assembled around Ukraine, more than 80% of those. If they throw 20 remaining, that would be difficult for us, but Ukraine can still stand. And of course, there is still weapons coming from the West day and night. across the border with Poland. There are weapons coming, anti-aircraft, drones, javelins, stingers, what have you. All of those are important to us. There's even been a talk about certain old Soviet fighter jets being given to Ukraine, something like 70 by Eastern European countries. That would help us because, of course, Russia otherwise would dominate in the sky. So Ukraine is definitely not finished, and therefore we're not prepared to capitulate. We're not prepared to sign any agreement on Russian terms.
Well, let's hope that this force of defense, and that's an interesting thing, we talk about what's going on. It's very much a defensive role that Ukraine is playing, right? Just sort of not retaliation, but so much as just sort of defense, not offensive. And I think that's how it's reported in the world, yeah.
Absolutely. There are some hot hats here who would say, well, they are shelling our cities. Let's send a few missiles into their cities. That would definitely escalate the conflict. And that's one thing. And second of all, that's not who we are. We're defending our land. That's the whole point. We don't want to hit any targets within Russia. We don't want the Russians to come here and die, because right now for several days, our Minister of Reintegration of the occupied territories has been asking International Red Cross to provide some support and come here and collect the bodies of dead Russian soldiers. The number is approaching 9,000 already, less than a week. They're not doing it. And then, so it's really difficult for us to fight, but we are still fighting, and there is still a fighting spirit in the people, and that's the most important thing. In several areas, there have been already major counterattacks, and including Donbass, by the way, because right now they don't have much forces there. And then some people, and we actually do have a grouping of forces there. And then people say, okay, if there is a total war, if it's an all-out invasion, why don't we attack the Donbass, Donetsk and Luhansk? And that would be a kind of a step in the back for the Russians. They would be prepared. They would have to regroup. So that should probably be considered. But right now, of course, we're having mostly difficult, very hard defensive battles.
Indeed. Is there any fears that Russia, Putin, will up the offensive, will use, because it seems to us that it's been day 7 now, day 7, day 8. It seems that Russia isn't really, I don't know, I don't want to make this sound like I'm going to say it, but it doesn't seem like it's giving its full force, as if it's trying to perhaps capture cities rather than destroy cities. Are there fears that Putin might change that tactic and go for destruction?
Well, those fears are materializing already. I think they're getting to that stage. If you look at Kharkiv, that's basically flooding down. They're shelling the city, which is actually unbelievable in many ways and paradoxical, because Kharkiv is actually one of the most pro-Russian cities in Ukraine, and that's where you have a large percentage of people who are Russian speakers and even ethnic Russians. And Putin is actually saying that's what he's doing. He's protecting these people here in Ukraine because, those Nazis, quotation marks, in Kyiv, are threatening them. And now he's threatening down the city. And the same with Sumy nearby. And the same, actually, most of the attacks are happening within the east and the south of Ukraine, where you have the most of those Russian speakers and people who were friendly to Russia for a long time. But now these people are under bombs. Now it doesn't matter what you thought of Mr. Putin before this war, because when you're sitting in a cellar, in a basement with others under the bombs, I don't think those people will actually think fine and nicely of what Russia is and doing these days. So it's really changing this whole correlation for them. If ever Russia had soft power with Ukraine, it was dealt a major blow by Putin himself back in 2014 when he started aggression. But right now he is basically putting the final nail in the coffin. There is no future for any friendliness towards Russia in this country, and he's losing us. Unless he actually occupies Ukraine, and I don't think he's capable of that. He doesn't have enough forces for that. He is going to lose Ukraine forever. And his major fear of Ukraine slipping away from Russian sphere of influence and going to join the other, family of nations in Europe, in the West, is gonna actually be materialized.
Well, let's hope so. That was a biased thing to say. I mean, let's hope the war stops at least. Anyway, Vladimir, I'm afraid we've run out. We're going to go live now to the Russian foreign minister. But thank you so much for joining me here on Anews. I appreciate it. I hope we get to speak again soon. Please stay safe and stay well.
Thank you.